Welcome to your Bible guide. We're going to be looking at Exodus chapter 19 today, and we've been exploring the story in the book of Exodus of the Israelites and Moses leading them out of slavery in Egypt. And they've been on this amazing journey of seeing all sorts of God's miraculous hand helping them get there. As they're headed towards the promised land, we saw the plagues, we saw the crossing of the Red Sea, we saw God giving them food and water from a rock. Food kind of rained down from heaven, and just all kinds of amazing things as we've seen this story. And now we're getting to this part of the story where they're going to go meet with God. So originally, God had delivered his message to Moses and said, "Hey, you're going to go get the Israelites, and you're going to know I'm God when you get back to this mountain to worship me." Okay, and now we're actually going to get back to this mountain, Mount Sinai, and we're going to see this story unfold. And so let's check it out in chapter 19 today. And here's how it goes. It says, on the third new moon, after the people of God, or after the people of Israel had gone out of the land of Egypt, on that day they came into the wilderness of Sinai. They set out from Rephidim and came into the wilderness of Sinai, and they encamped in the wilderness. There Israel encamped before the mountain. And so it's talking about this mountain of God where Moses had originally met with God and had received his instructions. And so they're finally back there, and we're going to see how the story unfolds. So the Israel encamped before the mountain while Moses went up to God. The Lord called to him out of the mountain, saying, "Thus you shall say to the house of Jacob and tell the people of Israel, you yourselves have seen what I did to the Egyptians, and how I bore you on eagle's wings and brought you to myself. Now therefore, if you will indeed obey my voice and keep my covenant, you shall be my treasured possession among all peoples, for all the earth is mine. And you shall be to me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. These are the words that you shall speak to the people of Israel." And this is some really significant things that Moses is saying here. He's reminding them, hey, remember, I did what I said. I brought you out of Egypt. You're supposed to remind the people of this, Moses. And also, he's going to come to some terms here, right? So they're about to enter into a covenant, but they're coming to these kind of terms, and some of the language in here is almost legal terms of this idea of treasure possession, and that you'll be my people, you're mine. And so he's really taken like an ownership over this people group. Now, previously, if you go all the way back to Genesis and the Tower of Babel, in that story, God disinherited all the nations of the world. But he said, hey, Israel, I'm going to make you my treasured possession, right? You're going to be my group of people that show the whole world what it's like to be in relationship with me. And so God started doing this. The next story in Genesis would be about Abram, who later becomes Abraham, and the unfolding of this story of like, hey, this group of people, this is how we're going to do it. Hundreds of years later, 400 years of slavery, and now we're back to this idea that God is starting to play out now, right? And so you are indeed my treasured people. And the description that he has for here says, and you're going to be to me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. So this idea of a kingdom of priests, right? So first of all, a kingdom, okay? And we see that, really all throughout the Bible is God is establishing his rule and reign, his kingdom on the earth. And because of our sin, because of our disobedience that humanity brings, that plan gets, not that the plan gets stifled, but the fulfillment of that doesn't look like it was intended to be, right? And so God is fulfilling this. Okay, later in the person of Jesus, he fulfills it and establishes that in even a greater way that we as followers of Jesus get to participate in that. But the deal from all along is like, hey, God wants us to be a kingdom. Okay, this group of people that looks to God as the king, of priests, of people who relate to God, and that's kind of this big idea. Okay, and then the last little phrase, a holy nation, right? So we see some of this. Peter talks about some of these same ideas in the New Testament, and it's just kind of a really cool concept that God has for us, the intention of his people. Of all time, right? Kingdom of priests and a holy nation. Okay, holy means set apart, right? So they were to be set apart unto God and God alone. So these are the words that you are to speak to the people of Israel. So Moses came and called the elders of the people and set before them all these words that the Lord had commanded them. Okay, remember, so Moses had previously, through the advice of Jethro, had said, hey, you need to organize different things and have people over, tens and fifties and hundreds and thousands and stuff like that. And here we kind of get this other group called, it says Moses comes to the elders of the people, okay, and maybe there was some overlap in this group, likely so. And they would have been kind of the main leaders of Israel that people would have looked to, and they shepherded over the people. It says, set before them all these words. Okay? And then verse 8, it says, all the people answered together and said, all that the Lord has spoken we will do. And Moses reported the words of the people to the Lord, right? So Moses had got this word from the mountain. He comes down, gives it to the elders, who gives it to the people, and they say, yep, we're in. We're going to do this. We're going to be a part of this. And so Moses goes back and reported the words of the people to the Lord. Okay, not that the Lord did not know what was going on, but this is what happened. Okay, verse 9, it says, and the Lord said to Moses, behold, I am coming to you in a thick cloud, that the people may hear when I speak with you, and may also believe you forever. And so God says to Moses, hey, I'm going to come to you in this thick cloud. Okay, now they would have understood this thick cloud as the presence of God, and we see this in a bunch of other places. There's kind of a weightiness of the Lord's presence. And he comes often in this kind of form of this kind of thick cloud. There's darkness, lightning, all of this kind of stuff. Also, to their understanding, the Jewish understanding and ancient Near East people, they would have understood that mountains are where God's lived, right? So that was their understanding. So they're going to meet God at this mountain, and God's going to call Moses up, and he's like, hey, I'm going to show the people kind of this manifestation of my presence in this form of a thick cloud, right? And they would have already been familiar with this, right? You also had the pillar of cloud and the pillar of fire, so they would have known this. And so they would have really understood, like, hey, okay, God is really meeting here. God's here. Moses isn't just going up and making things up when he comes down. God is really there. And so it says, the people may hear you or hear when I speak to you and may also believe you forever, right? So they're really going to understand, like, yeah, Moses is really getting this direct from God, all this stuff. When Moses told the words of the people to the Lord said to Moses, go to the people and consecrate them today and tomorrow and let them wash their garments. Verse 11, and be ready for the third day. For the third day, the Lord will come down on Mount Sinai in the sight of all the people, right? So they're at the base of this mountain, and God's saying, hey, I'm going to come down in kind of a unique way. You need to be ready and prepared. Okay, now this really speaks to us. Sometimes how we think of God, we sometimes think, I think especially in our culture, because we're so casual and stuff, we go here, or we're casual. Like they were really getting serious. They got to consecrate. They got to prepare themselves. They got to get ready because they're about to encounter the God of the universe, right? And so it says, wash your garments, right? Hey, you gotta wash yourselves. You gotta prep yourself for this encounter, and then, be ready, especially for the third day, is when the Lord is going to come down in the sight of all the people. Okay, verse 12, it says, and you shall set limits for the people all around, saying, take care not to go up into the mountain or touch the edge of it. Whoever touches the mountain shall be put to death, right? So this is a pretty big deal, right? This would be like, hey, the president's coming into town, and there's Secret Service, and there's all this preparation, and because they're doing all these things to make sure that everything goes well, right? So they're really prepping themselves, consecrating themselves, washing their clothes. You can't even touch the mountain, or you're going to be put to death. Verse 13, it says, no hand shall touch him, but he shall be stoned or shot. Or whether beast or man, he shall not live, right? So even like, man, if an animal just kind of wanders off, your sheep does, and gets to the mountain, like you got to stone it, right? You got to throw rocks at it. It says, don't even touch the one that's been kind of defiled in this way, right? So this is a really, really big deal. So it continues in verse 13, it says, when the trumpet sounds a long blast, they shall come up to the mountain. Okay, and this is signifying that the trumpet seemingly is coming from the mountain. It's not coming from them, right? That God isn't telling Moses, hey, get your guys with the trumpets, get ready. It seems like there's some kind of thing coming from the mountain itself, from God. So verse 14, it says, so Moses went down from the mountain to the people and consecrated the people, and they washed their garments, and he said to the people, be ready for the third day, do not go near women. Okay, so he's also instituting abstinence in here for preparation, right? And they would have a lot of views on blood, on different body fluids and stuff like that. And so they all would have represented life and spilling of life and stuff like that. And so that's why they were doing that. Verse 16, it says, on the morning of the third day, there were thunders and lightnings and a thick cloud on the mountain and a very loud trumpet blast. So all the people in the camp trembled. Okay, I want you to just kind of picture this. They're at the base of this mountain, somewhere around 1 million people, according to the Bible. And they're sitting there, and Moses telling them, okay, we're meeting with God. This is where I met with God. He told us to come here, worship here. And they're at the base of this mountain. They're doing all these preparations, right? Okay, man, we can't even touch the mountain or we're going to get killed. I just want you to be in that headspace with them. And then all of a sudden it says on the morning of the third day, there's thunders and lightnings and a thick cloud on the mountain. So they're looking up on the mountain, and there's all this stuff going down on the mountain. I mean, what an event. I can't imagine being there among the people, just looking up and being like, whoa, God is actually on this mountain, right? Because we kind of doubt, we kind of wonder, and they've gone through all this stuff, seen all the miracles, but still as humans, like, man, this is kind of crazy, right? This is a pretty wild story. But I want us to put us there, like if you're seeing that going down, and it says, and all the people in the camp trembled, right? I think that's a pretty good response because you're seeing that up on the mountain, thunder, lightning, loud noises, trumpets sounding. You're like, what is going on here? And it'd be a pretty scary thing in some ways. Verse 17, then Moses brought the people out of the camp to meet God. And they took their stand at the foot of the mountain, right? And so it's like, okay, come out of your tents. God's here. We're going to see him now. Verse 18, now Mount Sinai was wrapped in smoke because the Lord had descended on it in fire, right? So smoke and fire and noises. The smoke of it went up like the smoke of a kiln, and the whole mountain trembled greatly. So now also do we see all the things, the flash of lightning, the smoke, the fire, and there's like rumblings, right? Mountain trembled greatly, and as the sound of the trumpet grew louder and louder, right? The sound is louder and louder, kind of like drawing, like God's showing up, God's here. Moses spoke and God answered to him in thunder. I don't know what this is exactly like, but it kind of gives this impression of this like kind of bellowing voice. It's hard to even describe what's going on here. Verse 20 says, the Lord came down on Mount Sinai to the top of the mountain, and the Lord called Moses to the top of the mountain, and Moses went up. Right? So all the people are waiting here. They're seeing all this stuff going up on the mountain. And then God's like, Moses, you got to come up here. So Moses kind of leaves them. All the people are down there just kind of like waiting, anticipating. Verse 21, it says, then the Lord said to Moses, go down and warn the people lest they break through to the Lord to look, and many of them perish. He's like, hey, warn them if they try to break through and take a look here, they're going to die, right? There's going to be a breakout against them. And Moses said to the Lord, the people cannot come up to Mount Sinai, for you yourself warned us, saying, set limits around the mountain and consecrate it. And the Lord said to him, go down and come up, bringing Aaron with you. Right? And so now he's meeting with God, and he says, okay, now go get your brother Aaron, and he's going to come up with you. But do not let the priests and the people break through to come up to the Lord, lest he break out against them. So Moses went down and to the people and told them. Right? And so we get this just incredible event happening where Moses and the people of Israel encounter God on this mountain and see this scene. So some of the things we learn from this story, one is just getting kind of this picture and glimpse of God, because there's different facets of God. Okay, we got this idea that God is love. Okay, and that's like a primary foundational thing about who God is that God is love. Okay, but we also get this sense in here is like, wow, we also have this God who is holy and just like other. His presence is on this mountain in smoke and fire, and our response to him is, hey, we need to be consecrated. We need to be holy if we're gonna engage in any sort of relationship with this God. And so there's this other part of it is like, yeah, we do have this God of love. But we also have this God of other, this God of holiness, this God of power, and we're seeing these different elements. Okay, now our response to those needs to be appropriate, right? It needs to be appropriate for what is happening here. And so there's these warnings in here: don't touch it, don't go up here, don't try to exceed where you're not supposed to go, or you're going to be in trouble. we just see this incredible encounter. But Moses, kind of works in there and is this messenger to the people, and he's supposed to get Aaron in there. This next story that we're about to get to is where God actually starts saying, "Hey, here's the deal I want you to follow." Right? So we also get this glimpse of a little bit of history of like, hey, I disinherited the nations in Genesis. I chose you, Israel, to be my possession, to make my special people. And this has been like a long play, right? This is probably, at least 400 years, because that's how long they were enslaved, but 500 years ish, that God has been working at fulfilling his plan, and finally we get there. Sometimes it feels like God's really slow and doing the things we want him to. But we also see this idea that God is sovereign. He's working things out. Sometimes we don't understand how he does it. Like I don't think people would understood. Okay, I'm going to take you into slavery so I can establish you as the people I want you to be. Right? Sometimes we got to go through rough seasons. Sometimes we go through difficult times for God to establish the things he wants us to. Okay, and then in the midst of that, we got sin and all the mistakes that we make, and God is still though working out his plan and is able to do that in the midst of whatever humans are doing. And so we see this kind of incredible moment where Moses is going up and the presence of God is there. And we're going to continue this story as we look at what God reveals and what God's plan is instituting for this nation of Israel.